Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the USC Alumni Veterans Network Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program, Building a Dynamic Military Culture. I am Faith Clary, Manager of Regional Engagement Programs at the USC Alumni Association. We are so glad you are joining us to speak about diversity within military culture. Today's panelists are our Alumni Veteran Network board members, Dr. Allison Kill, Chris Buccal, Major Christine Poblete, Martin Ariola, and Captain Rufus Caetano. Dr. Allison Kill is a public health physician and a major in the United States Army. She graduated with her bachelor's degree in biological science from the University of Southern California in 2010 and with her doctorate of medicine from the USC Keck School of Medicine in 2014. She currently serves as the acting chief of the Department of Public Health at the Carl Darnell Army Medical Center in Fort Hood, Texas. In addition to her clinical duties, Dr. Kill is an adjunct assistant professor at the Preventive Medicine and Biostatistics at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences. Chris Buccal was born in Manila, Philippines. He served 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps and retired as a Master Sergeant. During his career, he served as Detachment Commander, U.S. Embassy Athens, Greece, and U.S. Consulate in Shanghai, the People's Republic of China. Chris has his bachelor's degree in emergency management and a minor in criminal justice, and his master's degree in homeland security. His personal decorations include the Meritorious Service Medal, Navy Commendation Medal, 3rd Award, and Navy Achievement Medal, 5th Award. Major Christine Poblete is the Chief of Strategic Communication for the Secretary of the Air Force Office of Public Affairs at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. In this position, Dr. Poblete serves as co-chair for the Department of Air Force Modernized Air and Space Forces. She is a graduate from Washington State University and in 2017 received her doctorate. Martin Ariola served in the United States Marine Corps from 1999 to 2014 as an ammunition technician, recruiter, and for the final 8 years as a firefighter. Currently, Martin is an operations manager for Amazon and oversees the daily operations of one of the largest delivery facilities in the Amazon network. Martin graduated from USC's Marshall School of Business in 2018 with a bachelor's in business administration. Captain Rufus Caetano currently serves as a commanding officer for Compact Flight Headquarters 120. In his civilian career, he is senior manager in transportation planning at the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. He holds a Doctor of Education degree from the University of Southern California, a Master's of Public Administration from Cal State Long Beach, and is a graduate from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, with an undergraduate degree in aviation management. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm virtual welcome to our panelists. And Christine, would you like to kind of begin with sharing about your experience in the military and transitioning into a veteran student?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Major Christine Poblete. It's an honor to be here to take part in USC's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Week as a board member for AVN. I'm currently active duty on the Air Force, in the Air Force, and I'm coming up on 14 years here, about to meet my Lieutenant Colonel board here soon, so a little bit of background on my career field. I came in as a nuclear and missile operations officer, otherwise known as missileers. We serve 24-hour alerts underground, monitoring intercontinental ballistic missiles, also known as ICBMs. And, we're the ones that are charged to launch them at the direction and authorization of the president. So I served my first 5 years at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, where I did that, where I pulled missile alert duties. I was also an instructor and chief of training out there before I moved out to Central California, Vandenberg Air Force Base, to do test launches out at the squadron there. And that's actually during that assignment was when I started my time as a graduate student for USC, and was able to most interact with folks on campus there. From there, I was stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, where I worked headquarters staff, admin positions. I worked legislative affairs for the commander there, as well as executive officer type positions. And then most recently moved to the DC area, where I am stationed currently at the Pentagon, working for the Office of Public Affairs for the Secretary of the Air Force, specifically on the portfolio of modernization of air and space forces. So it's been quite the journey. And I think what we want to do, the intent of this discussion here today is for each of us as board members and military prior and active is to sort of share our experiences within our own career fields and transitioning with how our own experiences have shaped the way we see diversity, equity, inclusion within an organization. And so I think it's widely known that diversity inclusion is, a force multiplier, and it gives an organization, the competitive edge. When I first started, and I'm probably one of the most junior members here on the board, so I'm excited to hear, my fellow board members' experiences from when they started out brand new. But when I first came into the service in 2007 and found out I was going into missile operations, I didn't know a whole lot about that. I did my undergrad in communication, thinking I would go in as a public affairs officer, and obviously I got there eventually. But coming into such a technical career field was quite the adjustment for me with a liberal arts background. And then in addition to that, coming in, the demographic was very apparent that I was the minority, growing up in Western Washington, where the community was very diverse, ethnically, socioeconomically. I knew people from different faiths and sexualities, and diversity was just the norm where I grew up. So needless to say, it was kind of a culture shock coming into the officer corps of the Air Force, where it's such a specific population in which a majority was white male, and in particular in the operational. And so, that was sort of the first time I think I realized that I was a minority. And so that sort of changed my lens on how I saw myself within the organization, and later on how I saw myself progressing or not progressing due to, the very clear underrepresentation of minority women in our leadership chain, which obviously, years later has changed, thankfully. So, I had a vested interest in how that demographic came to be. And that passion sort of grew and developed on the academic side as I focused a lot of my research and studies on diversity, equity, inclusion, particularly in military leadership. And that all sort of culminated in my USC doctoral dissertation on perspectives of diversity inclusion from minority women as it relates to the underrepresentation of women in leadership. So, I was very cognizant of that, but throughout my military journey, I think what has been most enriching when it comes to sort of shaping the culture of a military organization, which in its nature is hierarchical, is to make those real connections and use the authority within your sphere of influence to have these tough conversations and have the conversations that may make people uncomfortable, but that's when the most learning, I think, occurs. And so me just being able to sort of break the ice with my colleagues, so to speak, and have them learn about what my background is like, so as to avoid any sort of assumptions that they may have of me being so different. Right. And so that's really sort of fueled my passion to continue to serve and to make those real connections and to speak at events like these where we can further educate ourselves and learn more about each other. So I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about with my fellow board members. But at this point, I think I'll hand it over to Martin to share his story. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Martin Ariola. I grew up in a small border town here in California, out close to Yuma, Arizona. And all the Marines know where Yuma or El Centro might be. So growing up in a border town, I actually ended up being more so being of Hispanic background. I was actually a majority there. So seeing the Caucasian male, African, background was actually the minority in my area. So joining the Marine Corps and seeing that flipped, was definitely a culture shock. Seeing a plethora of different cultures, mixed into one organization to make ourselves stronger was a pleasant surprise. Being able to, learn and build upon people's strengths and different opinions to, grow outside of what, I was used to, kind of help push me beyond my time in the Marine Corps. After I did my first term as an ammunition technician, I moved on to being a recruiter in Phoenix, Arizona. Big Hispanic area also, but again, the area that I was in charge of or that I canvassed out of had a plethora of different backgrounds. And, I was able to, in order to make myself successful, be able to engross myself into the different cultures, to be able to relate to these future Marines and influence them to the possibilities of what the Marine Corps had to offer. After leaving there, I went to firefighting, where I spent my final 2 terms in the Marine Corps, where I kind of spent time in a heavily male-dominant field where you saw 1 or 2 females in a firehouse. So mostly male-dominant background, which kind of had this almost like machismo, hey, I don't know if the young ladies can keep up or not, but I saw plenty of young ladies keep up and then some to their male counterparts, which only, fortified the whole cultural blend in the Marine Corps. That doesn't matter what race you are, what ethnicity, gender, if you're willing to put in the hard work, it will pay off. So that kind of helped push me upon leaving the Marine Corps to go into school and learning about USCs and how they push into, really every one of their students and alumni and faculty, the emphasis on, inclusion, just learning about, the different courses that were available. It was really, eye-opening on how, much USC pushed this, which made it a really pleasant transition from the blend of the Marine Corps to, USC's, international blend. So upon graduating, I was more than happy to join, the AVN board, where, as everyone can see, there's a mixture of cultures and backgrounds, which kind of helps push and fortify that inclusivity that I've kind of, grown to be the norm since I first joined the Marine Corps. This has, helped me transition into Amazon and my prior employer, where, again, just seeing the mixture of different cultures to achieve a mission is the ultimate goal. It doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you bring great ideas to make yourself successful or make the business successful. That's all that matters. So it's kind of helped fortify that and kind of bring people together, regardless of what background they come from. It's like, hey, we all have a mission, regardless of what it is, military or the civilian sector. We're all getting paid to do something. Let's come together to achieve that. So I'm gonna pass it over to Chris, if you're ready, sir.
Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. So I served 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. I almost served half of my adult life in the military. And my last duty station was in Camp Pendleton. I was the operations manager for a big combat unit. I have 2 combat deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. And prior to my retirement, I was assigned as the operations chief for deployments to Afghanistan for deployment and redeployment. I was fortunate enough to serve with a diverse group of people coming from diverse all walks of life in American society. In addition, I was assigned overseas, so I was also fortunate enough to be exposed to different cultures. Like Martin said, in the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps has 2 missions: mission accomplishment and troop welfare. And along the way, being Filipino that I am, so I'm kind of, a little bit of a unicorn because most Filipinos join the Navy. So I'm less than 0.001% that joined the Marine Corps, but they took me in. I mean, I learned from different aspects from my peers, my subordinate, and my superiors on how to be a effective leader. I took the good and I left the bad. During my time, there was don't ask, don't tell. And then, in my opinion, that the Marine Corps never had any issues with race and diversity because we all treated everyone as one. It's kind of weird to say that, but it is true that we accept all. I cannot say we accept all kinds, but we bring everybody in as part of a team. And I've been fortunate to be a member of that, and I carry that over to my current position. I'm currently a security officer for the Navy, working on special access programs, which is a very diverse group of young professional individuals coming from diverse background as well. So I was able to assimilate and apply what I've learned and kind of mentor those very, very young engineers coming through a military environment like the Navy. So that's how I try to share my experiences. And being a board member for the Veterans Network, it gives me an additional outlet to help fellow Trojans along the way. With that being said, let me turn it over to Captain Rufus.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Good afternoon, everybody. Rufus Cayetano, as Faith said in her introduction. Captain, United States Navy, still serving, and doctorate me from the Razia School Unlike most of the folks like being online, born in Belize. So when I came to America, shortly after graduating from high school, you can only imagine what the transformation was like. For someone relatively new to the country, and even though I had visited before, I finally, started working as an enlisted with folks, of various backgrounds, and you start getting into areas, such as, for instance, like in the open bay, that we used, and at the time it was difficult, to understand why the military allowed us, to do that. Open bay showers, the parties, were the same, hardly any privacy, or none, quite frankly. And then you realize, in retrospect, that the reasons for all that, was because the military was trying to break us, down into, basically one common denominator in terms of why we exist, and that is primarily, excuse me, our collective responsibility to fight in unison with one goal in mind, and for us to be successful. And in doing so, as you're aware, you wear the uniform, you look to your right, you look to your left, you look in front of you, you look behind you. These are all your shipmates, and we come, or airman, or battle buddy, depending on the service that you are in, but we're all one, and that's the reason, why we exist, in order for us, to be able, to fight. I pursued my undergraduate degree while I was on active duty, using tuition assistance program. Again, thanks, to, I tell folks, over and over again, my rich, Uncle Sam. And then I got out, did the master's degree, affiliated with the reserves. And today, I'm a captain, 06, in the United States Navy. This is my third command, that I just assumed at the beginning of this month. Prior to that, I was the commanding officer for the Defense Contracting Management Agency, as the top dog overseeing all the agencies, the Navy Reserve units within DCMA. And then prior to that, I ran the small DCMA unit out of Baltimore. And then prior to that was the executive officer for the Fleet Logistics Unit out of San Diego. Again, the one common theme that we have as far as this diversity, equity, and inclusion is concerned, that I've preached over and over and over again. We in the military know how to do it. I think the civilian folks are slowly coming on board with it. But again, the requirements that we have to meet each year. The training. Even though our former president had tried to strip this from that requirement that we need to do yearly. I think it's just something that is beneficial to all concerned. So across the board, we know how to treat each other with respect, etc. So I won't suck up all the oxygen in the room. I assume then that I'll kick it off into Dr. Kill.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My apologies for jumping on a bit late. I'm Allison Kill. I actually just finished my final day of Captain's Career course, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Today was graduation and out processing, so it's been quite hectic. But thank you all for being here today, and for everyone to share their stories so far. For me, I've always known I wanted to be in the Army. It's always been kind of a dream of mine ever since I was a kid, learning about generals and the wars. And being of Korean descent myself, I knew it's how I wanted to give back to America for their intervention in the Korean War conflict several decades ago that I know many of our grandparents served in. So I went the medical route. I knew I was going to be in the Army. I had initially applied to go to West Point. I was accepted. I was nominated by Senator Dianne Feinstein. However, I ended up not going because USC, in fact, offered me a position in the baccalaureate MD program, which now doesn't exist. But at the time, it was too good of a program to pass up. But I knew I would be in the Army later, so I did. For medical school, the Army paid for me to attend through the HPSD scholarship. And I've been in ever since. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 2010 and as a captain in 2014 when I graduated from med school. However, that is not to say my medical journey has been smooth sailing. It was quite an interesting few years it's been that's gotten me up to this point. But I still have such gratitude for being part of the armed forces. I definitely have experienced my fair share of challenges in even my experience in racial inequity and issues within the Army itself has definitely affected me, has definitely taken some terms with particular attention to AAPI type of discrimination. That's something I faced. However, I know it is something that's part of our reality, a part of our world today, won't go away anytime soon. So the way I see it is, do I want to be part of this system and choose to leave because of the negativity that I've seen and experienced? Or do I want to rise within the system and try to change it as I go? And that's the route I'm opted to take and that I'm continue to take. I do hope to stay and retire in the Army. I do love the military and what it does for everybody. And it is how I want to get back. So thank you for letting me share my story.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Allison started talking about her own personal experience with, being either discriminated against or having some sort of, or experiencing that on her own. I want to open it up to the board members just to ask if, they've had any similar type experiences or have witnessed anything in which, they've intervened or leverage their leadership position to sort of have those difficult conversations within your own career or timeline.
I think I'll go first. I think the only real time that I saw this issue again was during my last field where I was, serving as a firefighter. Again, a heavily male dominant, field. Most of the firefighters didn't see too many females in, the firefighter ranks. So being able to open their mind to hey, we're all one team, one fight at the end of the day. We really on a daily basis, even when not in combat, rely on each other to make sure we go home safe. The next emergency you respond to, Private Smith over there, it doesn't matter whether she's a female or not, we got to get her trained up along with every other firefighter to be able to carry their own weight and be able to support each other to, accomplish the mission to save lives and save property. So at the end of the day, that pushed my team, collectively to push forward to, just like Chris said, mission accomplishment. But I've always, Chris might argue with me, but I've never liked the order of those. I've always felt that mission, at the end of the day, troop welfare comes first. With it comes mission accomplishment. Because at the end of the day, I took care of my team. They understood that we were a family, and that pushed us to succeed. And I saw my teams develop from various firefighting stations that I was assigned to, from being, mediocre to being one of the top stations wherever I went. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn by no means. Again, it's just that team mentality, take care of each other first, regardless of what your background or, state of mind is. We need to take care of each other first. And that kind of helped push the mentality beyond, the background or genders, to make people better in the Marine Corps. Again, not that there was discrimination by any means, but just that thought that maybe they aren't strong enough, as others might be. Pushing them beyond that. It's like at the end of the day, we all need to be strong. We can't have any weaklings, because at the end of the day, that could get somebody hurt and or killed. And I don't want to respond to somebody's parents and why somebody didn't come home to an everyday incident.
Anyone else? I guess I'll share a little bit in with regards to to Allison's point and sort of being hyper aware of your identity, right, within an organization in which there's a very clear dominant demographic, particularly in leadership. And while to Martin's point, like we sort of operate under this unofficial people first, mission always, right? So you can't get the mission done without the people. And so that falls upon leadership to really create those inclusive environments in which, people who may not feel like they belong because, they're just different, or they're the clear outlier of the group, to sort of bring in those different perspectives. Because if we're seeking to create this sort of lethal force for the future, we need we need those innovative thoughts. So we need the diversity of thought and diversity of background in order for us to enable better decision making for the future, because the future threats of tomorrow will not, will be different than what we're facing here today across all domains. And I think our new defense secretary made that very clear in communicating his new priorities, one of which is building resilient people and taking care of them and ensuring that well-being always comes first, and that comes from leadership. So I can name off several examples, but they were never as explicit as you would think they would. They were never like explicit forms of discrimination. They were also always sort of on the lines of borderline of microaggressions in terms of you're different, you're a minority woman, I don't really know how to speak to you or what to do with you. You're not into the things that we're into within this network of good old boys that have been so, well established in the organization. And I'm sitting here thinking, how do I get in? How do I fit in? And I just can't. So I think I would offer that with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the message is the same across all organizations in which, you can't get to the diverse teams that you seek, that will offer the ideas that you need to get you to meet these future challenges if you're not first inclusive. And so I just think everyone has their own unique experience. And obviously, as an all volunteer force, yes, we all are afforded equal opportunities and equal rights to advance in the military. But we can't, sort of forget the cultural nuances that come with the dynamics of the climate and the leadership in which we're placed under, and the leaders that we seek to be. So I think with that, Faith, should we open it up to audience questions?
Yes. So if you do have a question, please feel free to raise your virtual hand. You can also place your questions in the chat. Now, I know you all spoke about your experiences being active in the military, but as some of you are now veterans, how would you say your experience in the veteran community has been as far as diversity and support and inclusion?
And I
Hi,
have go ahead, Rufus.
Rufus, Cayetano here. I work for Metro in Los Angeles, and I have to admit, when the new CEO, who's currently in the position, came on board, he's retired, Army E9. I kind of spoke to him from the perspective, that I'm sure he understood in terms of this very same topic, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, because, and I juxtapose, or made a comparison to how we operate, in the military. In the military, as you know, we have milestones, if you would, or boxes, that you're required, to check that allows, those who are above you to make an assessment, of your ability to perform at the next level in the pay grade. Oftentimes, what I've noticed, on my job, when I guess what drove me to I always wanted to do it. I couldn't afford it. But what drove me to work on getting an education from USC is I noticed as soon as I started working for the agency that there was a bias towards students that were either graduates of USC or UCLA. That bias exists. I experienced it, and there just seems to be a preference for those type of students. The point is that when you're not allowed, to look at, a board, for instance, your boardroom, your officers, your first line supervisors, who are sitting at that table making the decisions that take the diversity, the inclusion into consideration. And if that board doesn't look like what the regular population looks like, I think that affects your ability to do right and to do the right things. And so I noticed, quite frankly, to the point that we're discussing, that is one of the things that is lacking in my organization. There has been a serious push to bring on board a diverse cabinet, if you would, for the CEO. But it's still, in my judgment, lacking at the lower levels, where oftentimes those decisions are made to bring certain people into the workforce. That's the difference that I see from a military standpoint compared to the civilian workforce. Martin, you had something to say?
I think Chris had something, and then I'll go after Chris if he had something.
Yeah, so I've never really experienced any issues while I was in the Marine Corps, just for me personally, although I've witnessed beforehand on diversity inclusion is during my first deployment to Iraq, when we're the first push. My OIC was a female, and during the planning meeting, she's the only female on deck, and part of the mission is to breach the berm to go to Iraq, and we will be the lead element to let the combat teams to go through. And I could see on the eyes when she was briefing on how she's gonna breach it, all the stuff on the question on can she do it? Can she do it? I noticed that. So she proved it all along that she was able to do it. She was very successful, and there was a big argument a few years back of women in combat. I've seen that firsthand. That as far as the Marine Corps is concerned, they've been serving in combat ever since. Female pilots are flying sorties. That is very dangerous. So that's the only experience I had. But it's it's the perception that women cannot serve in combat, and that is very untrue. I think it's the heart and the dedication that what's gonna lead you to battle. I mean, she led me to Iraq all the way to Baghdad as a female warrant officer, and she told me that her entire career she has to prove herself in the Marine Corps. It's a male-dominated field, so she's used to it. But she doesn't do it just to show people off. She did it because she can do it. She is up for the job.
I think to touch upon your question, Faith, in regards to the veteran community, I think since my departure from active service, it seems like it's easier to build a bond with prior service members when you find out, that they were in the service, regardless of what branch. I mean, granted, if it's interbranch, Marine to Marine, Army to Army, there's a stronger click because you're able to relate to different, bases and areas of operation. But being able to click with those various service members. And I think the biggest thing I've seen more recently has been kind of almost like a higher expectation of us, from service member to service member, especially when there's one that's, transitioned or made their way up the leadership ladder to expect more of like, hey, you're a service member, so you've got a lot to prove. I was able to do it. You need to do it too. So holding each other to a higher standard, that's kind of expected of us, regardless of what branch we came from, and kind of meeting those expectations, to kind of lead from the front, where, our experiences are basically bringing us, we can basically rely on those experiences to basically push us forward. It's like you've got that leadership, all those intangibles that, somebody that might have just came straight from college into employment might not have. So having those higher expectations are kind of, what I've seen more so recently from upper management that have come up through the ranks and now see me as a junior member within their ranks, trying to build me up to, to their position.
Now, we do have some students that have joined us today, some ROTC students, and maybe some that are just considering a career in the military. What would be your advice for those students when entering into the military?
I can tell you if there are ROTC students, from a leadership perspective, you always want to work your buns off as much as you possibly can. You need to be as knowledgeable, or perhaps the most knowledgeable among your group. Not to hoard knowledge necessarily, but in order for you to use it as a powerful tool. In the military, I'm sure they do it in the other services, but in the Navy, in particular, we have those boxes that you check off. For instance, that look at your leadership qualities. How you operate as a team member, your professionalism, etc. The bottom line is you want to always do the best job that you possibly can. Try to volunteer to take on those tough responsibilities, because at the end of the day, when you're evaluated, you are being evaluated against your peers, quite frankly. And the bottom line is you want to be at the top of that ranking when it's time for those evaluations to be performed. that's just it. You work as hard as you possibly can, always being willing to take on those additional responsibilities and do what needs to be done. And I guarantee you, I mean, if you do that and you check all those boxes, I mean, that you're supposed to, getting all the education, that you need to, military as well as non-military out the way, you'll be a force to be reckoned with for a very long time.
So I have an input on that one coming from the enlisted perspective, right? For upcoming officers, junior officers, two things that you have to remember. Right? You are in charge. You're gonna inherit your platoon. They will work for you. However, you need to listen to your senior enlisted advisors because they have more experience. They've seen it all and done it all. And additionally, have compassion to the troops. As a second lieutenant, as a young captain, you might take on all the missions, but please be considerate on if you take on all the missions on how much effort, how much work you're putting the young Marines through. Remember that they're also humans. I mean, they feel pain, they feel tired, although they're not going to show it. But balance it out and lead from the front. And if you listen to those things, and you'll be a very successful military officer, in my opinion.
Okay, I'll give my 2 cents, and then I want to make sure we answer Matthew's question in the chat. A biggest thing I could advise is, again, like I mentioned earlier, take care of your people first. Because at the end of the day, it's a team effort. You can't do it alone. And if you really rely on, like how Chris said, your senior leadership, their advice, their experience, you'll be successful. That's helped me out even now. My current position outside of the military, going into a new field, I relied on the experience of those that aren't, in the management, at the management level. And I basically almost officer rank, and they're in the enlisted rank, and rely on that expertise and their experience to make great decisions. And, not see myself above what they have to bring. Being open to their, advice, and ultimately that's really has made my career so far successful.
I'm going to jump in real quick before we answer Matthew's question in the chat. Obviously, echoing all of my board members' sentiments on trust your senior NCO because they are the expert and they know what's really going on. They will be your ear to the field. And if you build a strong relationship with them, you will be golden. Also, be the expert in your field. Never stop learning. You want to be credible as a leader, and you're able to train and navigate problems regarding your particular career field. And then just as important is leading your people and taking care of them, because you ultimately work for them, right? So you are in charge, but you are serving your people. You are taking care of them and their families and their professional development. So take that responsibility seriously, because that they will work for you if they know that you're working for them, and you are looking out for their best interests, and they will take care of you, and they won't let you fall. With that, did any of you guys want to take a stab at the questions in the chat? It looks like we have a question from Matthew Darst. It seems that most of the discussion among active duty communities revolves around explicit and overt racism or discrimination. These examples are obvious and pretty easily addressed by UCMJ and command structures. In your experience, how are microaggressions and more passive discriminatory behaviors being addressed? How do we do better? It's a great question. I'll take a stab at it. From the Air Force side, these are things that we've studied very carefully as they relate to organizational culture and a lot of that foundational knowledge of how to address behaviors like microaggressions and these more passive acts are through leadership development and professional education. So, for example, we have a course in which all squadron commanders will go through before they take command, called Leadership Development Course in Maxwell Air Force Base, in which they have structured the curricula so that we are addressing topics that in the past have not been in your traditional leadership training setting. Topics such as emotional intelligence, unconscious bias, and diversity inclusion. So I think, just starting those conversations with future leaders and having them aware of what biases are and how to address them is a good start to combating the more implicit behaviors that happen day to day. But yeah.
So in my experience, right, in the Marine Corps is we grow from small unit leadership, very small. I mean, fire team, 4 people. One's going to be in charge all the way. So we develop our leaders by listening and making sure that they address what is going on at the lowest level. They tend to listen to their fellow Marines, and if they could handle it at their level, it could be done. But if they don't, they'll always have an avenue to address the question at a higher level, the staff NCOs, the junior officers, and so on and so forth. So from the microaggressions, and we're very aware of that, and we teach our young Marines to make sure that if you feel that you've been discriminated or somebody's kind of out of line jokingly or indirectly, if they feel uncomfortable, they have an avenue or they have ways to address it without the feeling of repercussion. That started from hazing of the early days in the 90s up to now. In my opinion, the Marine Corps or the military has improved a great deal as far as this microaggressions and passive discriminatory issues. It does still happen, but to me, it's very, very small amount. However, the small amount, when it gets blown out into proportion, it becomes a big matter. And that's how we deal with it. We encourage our Marines to lead from the front and to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. So we encourage that all through the ranks.
I think the way we normally try to accomplish dealing with any type of issue, whether it's racial, microaggression, whatever is counterproductive, to good morale, and for us, to work together cohesively, as a unit, stems from the topic of training, that the 2 folks before me have touched on. In the military, we do, general military training on any number of topics related to the issues that we're discussing. We try to make sure, that I guess just by human nature, we follow the golden rule, to do unto others. As you would like, them to do unto you. That should be number one. In my judgment, but under those circumstances, when there are deviations, from that golden rule, and where people feel as if they were aggrieved, or something was not done that was consistent with the rules and the regulations that we have in place for to address decency. We always encourage folks to use the chain of command and to report that discrepancy being upwards, and those are addressed seriously, to the point where folks for those who have committed the violation can be sent for counseling, and even to the point where they're processed out of the military because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing as far as the military is concerned. I'll close on this last point. The SecDev, Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Aston came in the other day, and of course you guys know he's a retired 4-star General Army. And because of all the problems that we experienced recently, to include the incident on the Capitol, has ordered across the board extremism or a stand down to address extremism within our military ranks. So that is something that we're actively doing. It has to be completed by April. But again, this is one case when the military oftentimes find that there is something wrong. We basically push the pause button, everything stops, and we go back to dedicated training to address the issue at hand, because that's the best way that you can in essence educate your workforce to ensure that people are doing the right thing.
We have one final question from KF. What more can the DoD do to be more inclusive of women, especially women of color, in the higher echelons of active duty ranks?
I can take a stab at that. So I can tell you that at least, to Rufus's point, Defense Secretary Austin has been very vocal about what his priorities are. One of which is, addressing issues more deliberately, such as sexual assault, and how we're approaching diversity inclusion training across the department and across the forces. I can tell you sort of where we're at in the Air Force with regards to, what we're doing in terms of shifting the culture through policy changes. There's a equal opportunity directive that required us to stand up the Department of the Air Force Barrier Analysis Working Group. And under that group are 6 specific teams that are focused on research and development within underrepresented groups, to include African Americans, Asian Americans, women, Hispanics, and you get the point. So there are these teams, most of which are completely volunteer to get after specific lines of effort and initiatives to address any sort of barriers to advancement. And so it's very timely that this question came up, because I was just speaking at the inaugural Air Force Women's Air and Space Power Symposium, which was hosted by the Women's Initiatives team. And they have broken many longstanding barriers, one of which was to update the anthropometric standards for aircraft, which have historically excluded 44% of women and people of color from flying or partaking in air crew career fields. So that was an absolute milestone on the acquisitions forefront in creating a more inclusive Air Force and opening up doors for more women who want to fly or be on air crew. So we are taking deliberate steps across the force. And I think with the new leadership and administration at the helm, we're going to get there a little bit faster than we have in the past. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
One thing on the question regarding inclusiveness, especially women, a few months ago, the Marine Corps crossed a major bridge. The Marine Corps is the only branch of service that separate our boot camp, basic training. A few months back, MCRD San Diego started a platoon of recruits that has male and female in a platoon. And I think that's one big step towards inclusivity as far as we're concerned, because all the services have been doing it before, and now we've, although a little bit late, but we're catching up with the times.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing today. I want to thank all that have joined us. We hope that you enjoyed this afternoon's event. The USC Alumni Veterans Network hosts programming and events throughout the year, ranging from community service projects to informative presentations like tonight that appeal to children veterans of all ages and interests, and to our USC military family. Please make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at USC AVN to stay connected and learn about our upcoming events. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great evening and fight on.